Hello, good evening and welcome to Face the Nation. I'm not going to waste time on a long-winded introduction to today's topic because amidst all of the uncertainty and unpredictability in our lives today in Sri Lanka, there are two things that are constants: power cuts and fuel queues. Let me introduce our topic today, the crisis in the energy sector, and allow me to introduce our guests really quickly. We're joined this evening by a preeminent panel of experts on the subject. We are joined by Mr. Cyril Suduwalla, who is the former laboratory and technical head and former acting chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, amongst many other positions that he's held in the past. We're also joined by Professor Anura Vijayapala, who's been on Face the Nation on many occasions before, while we keep returning to this our favorite subject. Former CEB chairman, Professor Anura Vijayapala, and also, again, no stranger to Face the Nation, Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, the president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. I'd actually like to start off this evening's discussion with Professor Anura Vijayapala, because you've been here before and it seems that we keep going around the same bush. I think in the 5 years or so that Face the Nation has been on the air, we would have had at least a year's worth of shows where we focus on the crisis in the energy sector. Right now, we have this problem where we are looking at continuous power cuts. There are rumors that power cuts could continue for another 3 years, according to some. Who's to blame for this, Professor Vijayapala? I want to first pose that question to you. Is it short-sightedness in policy making on the part of successive governments? Is it the Ceylon Electricity Board itself? Is it the Public Utilities Commission? Is it the public? Where did we go wrong?
I think all are to be blamed to varying degrees. Over the last, say, even 20 years or even more, because we have been making wrong decisions and entertaining them, and we never saw any results of them. We never anticipated, and all these things contributed to this crisis. Now see, look at today's crisis. Today's crisis is the core reason is we don't have dollars to run our economy. We don't have enough money to run our economy, to buy what we want to import, especially fuels and other essentials. And why it happened? Mismanagement of the economy on one hand. On the other hand, we have been importing unnecessary amounts of many things, including oil. And for example, in the power sector, so we have not been caring about the energy efficiency, and we sometimes talk when there are power cuts. We talk about energy efficiency and conservation, etc. But we soon forget. So the people are also to be blamed in that respect, and also the CEB and other institutions. So they are on that very comfortable path, and we have been importing oil and other petroleum resources and wasting a lot of them. Even today, see, now we are importing fuels under Indian help to 2 billion or whatever amount, and I think about 20% is wasted on the roads, on the queues, and on the traffic that is made by the queues, and no one cares. We import by big dollars and then we waste it here. I'm sure the Indian High Commissioner must be laughing at us, and we beg more. We go on begging and bring them here and waste it. So to your question, that we have been making a lot of mistakes in the past, especially very recently on this fertilizer issue, as well as the tax cancellations, etc. They are the significant ones which has immediate impacts of big scale. But even previously, wrong decisions on, for example, CEB's generation mix, and not doing the power plants at the right time, whereas other countries did them far ahead of us, and they are comfortably off. They face the COVID pandemic impacts on the energy sector conveniently, and their economies came back on line without any big choking. But our economy choked. And why it is only us, even in South Asia? all the other countries are managing the COVID impacts, as well as the world, that these days world economy is having a kind of a meltdown also, that all prices, commodity prices are going up. Oil, coal is 250, 300, oil is 120. Today I saw it has come down to 110. So, and World Bank has predicted it may be by end of 2023, the oil may come to about $90 a barrel, and so will be the other fuels, etc.
Even LNG is increasing.
Yes, LNG is about say $20 per MMBTU, which was about $7-8 some time back. But we have to face this. But I don't personally believe that these things have come to stay, these high prices. So once the supply demand mismatch goes off, especially the Russian supplies come back to normal, and then because they are supplying a lot of oils, maybe about 10% of oil and about 25% of gases and so on. So there are disturbances for them to supply them to the world market now. So all these things have caused this upset, but our problem is created by us, and we could have faced this much better. And even now we are doing the same. If I can take 2 minutes more, that in 1996 we had the big power cuts for the first time in history. Earlier they have been small ones, but 1996 there were 8-hour power cuts. But then government handled the situation better. They brought a Energy Supply Act in the Parliament, and appointed the Energy Supply Committee, fully authorized, and they are not to be that under any politician. So appointed good people for that committee, headed by a good officer from the government, and they were empowered to handle the situation, to buy short-term power or whatever the things and handle it. But now we have a crisis. Who is managing the crisis? If I ask you who is managing the crisis, anybody is managing? No, they are patching up. They are patching up. I remember that some time before, the petroleum minister coming and say the petroleum trucks went to sheds and they are full and they came back, while people are on the queues. Is that the way to manage?
I mean, when you look back at history, something to keep in mind also is that back in those days, renewables were a significant part of our power grid. Renewables in the sense hydropower. Hydro was the main source of Sri Lanka's electricity power needs for a long time. Not energy as a whole, because we still needed fuel to run the cars and the trucks and the buses and the trains and whatnot. But at least in terms of electricity, we were predominantly on a renewable. Why is it that Sri Lanka, over the years, since then, we haven't really focused on expanding that renewable base? I mean, I'm not disputing that regardless of the problems that have been there with it, maybe the North Chile power plant was necessary. But in addition to that, I mean, this is one of the reasons that the government has put forward for the new act that was passed in Parliament. And there's big problems with this act, of course, when it comes to the lack of competitive bidding. But there is definitely a drive towards introducing more renewables. Why is it that we didn't focus on this in the future? Why is it that we didn't look at, even other sources in the past, like, even if it's like, I mean, this is way out there, but even sources like nuclear energy?
Yeah, the hydro was predominant in 1980s, but by the time 1990s, mid 1990s, we had developed most of the plants, and only a few remained to be developed. So the opportunities were less. But in 1996, we introduced this small hydro concept, and now it has brought up some significant amount of capacity in addition to wind and solar, which are going behind it. But the largest capacity has come from small hydros, and they are also good plants. But the CEB and the government has not been very proactive in this, looking at the future opportunities. For example, if you look at Bangladesh has been working on a nuclear plant for a long time, and in 2017 they signed a contract with Russia to build a 2,400 megawatt nuclear power plant in the middle of a city, right in the middle of a city, right? And they are commissioning the first unit next year, 2023, and the other 1,200 one year after. And they have been very proactive, and see, they got a loan, $12.5 billion loan, soft loan from Russia, and the technology from Russia, and the Russia will take away nuclear waste and everything and supply fuel. So, they have a free way of operating it, and so they will get electricity at about 5 US cents per unit from that plant for 60 years. For 60 years, lifetime is 60 years. So, you can see their leaders have been very proactive, and they have planned well, but when we hear talk about a nuclear plant, some may say don't talk about that, right. If Bangladesh can do it in the middle of a city, why can't we think about that because long planning is required if you go for such a plant.
Thank you very much, Professor Anura Vijaypala, former chairman of the CEB. Moving from electricity to, well, I mean, it's technically the same subject of energy, but Mr. Cyril Suduwalla, former laboratory and technical head and former acting chairman at the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Mr. Suduwalla, the two of you represent, or at least formally represented, two of the biggest state-owned enterprises in this country. Do you think that these entities have done, when you look at the current state that the country is in, like I said, there's, amidst all of the uncertainty and the unpredictability in our lives, there are two things that are now constant. You have to stay in queues for fuel, and you will experience power cuts. Those are the two constants in our lives now. When you look back at that, do you feel like these mammoth government entities have served their purpose, have done justice to the Sri Lankan people?
Yes, if you just go back to the history of the petroleum, or what we call is about 150 years industrial era. So we have passed many eras in the history, but this era is called industrial era because of the industrial and the usage of petroleum and the fossil fuel. So fossil fuel we discovered somewhere about in 1859, and even we used that one intensely. We used that one after Second World War, and after that, now today, in addition to petroleum and the energy as energy, so the petroleum products are used for everywhere. In about 700 to 1 million, the day-to-day consumers are made out of petroleum. So the petroleum becomes so important, and at the same time, petroleum has become the main pollutant of the environment. So after the Second World War, the various the engines were converted to the petroleum, the fossil fuel, the engines like the railway, the steam engine were converted to diesel engine, and most of the ships were converted. And then today, of course, the ships are again converted to LPG. And so, if you go back to the first the CPC in the Sri Lankan history, and up to 1950, end of 50s, the entire the petroleum business were run by multinational companies like Shell, Esso, and Texaco and Mobil, like international companies. And after privatization, nationalization of petroleum industry, and initially it was a lucrative business. At the same time, the golden era of the development in the petroleum industry, and even some of the most of the in the public sector, the highest paid employees were found in the petroleum industry, and because they were looked after well. And so if you see the first until 1961, the first after the CPC was formed, then the refinery was formed. After that, the new additions came, like the nylon 6 came, and the SPBM came, and then Muthuradila tank farm, Urudatta tank farm, and then the candle factory, and the cutback bitumen, and industrial products, lube oils, and all this development came as one of the helping.
Professor Suduwalla, I don't dispute that. I mean, the fossil fuel industry, the petroleum, coal, gas, has been extremely profitable for global private enterprises, sometimes semi-private, state-owned as well, whether it's Saudi Aramco or Texaco or ExxonMobil or ELF in France, or myriad of Gazprom in Russia. All these companies are making supernatural profits almost, right? And they're still making supernatural profits. What I think my specific question is, as far as entities that are run from the public purse, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, as your experience as a former, I will not ask you to comment on the CEB, but CPETCO itself, do you feel that this enterprise has done justice to the investment that the Sri Lankan taxpayers made in it?
No, definitely no. That is what I am trying to say. Initially the investments were done on in the good faith, and in fact we stopped the foreign exchange drain, and the refinery itself earned minimum of 20% crack margin starting from the right from the beginning and even up to date. But today you see the refinery is usually run by half throughput or even less than half throughput. And if the refinery is done full throughput, and if you get the total product of the LPG and then naphtha, petrol, and then kerosene, jet fuel, and then go to diesel, and then the furnace oil, the bitumen, and then the other solvents, and you can get the various products by importing just one single the crude oil and then processed into various products, minimizing wastages and the maximizing profit. But what happened is due to bad management and the right crude oil not imported in the right time, and various crude because the refinery is made with the bottleneck of it, the refinery can make only the specific crude oil at the beginning. But so many proposals came for the expansion and development of refinery, but nothing has happened. Only the people are just talking and not invested. And if the refineries was invested...
But why hasn't that happened, Professor? Because you look, for example, we have the oil tanks in Trinco. Then under the previous administration, there was a plan to, at that time, they touted it as the biggest foreign direct investment in the history of Sri Lanka, the planned Mirijavilla oil refinery. And there was also a cement factory. I think the factory was open, but never the oil refinery wasn't. But all of these grand plans, nothing has ever come to fruition.
That is the problem. So
why hasn't it come to fruition?
Main reason, I will give very good one example. The one of the very important project came for the refinery hydrocracker. When the hydrocracker came, I don't want to name people, but it was that is anywhere in the world. Now, for example, our refinery and Egypt, the Alexandria refinery was built in the same scale, about 35,000 barrels per day, and then it 50,000 and 100,000, and they developed. It's a very big refinery. And our CPC refinery also had the same plan, but all of a sudden when the hydrocracker came, and there was a kickback issue, the 50% kickback issue, and it was abandoned. And after that, another Sapugaskanda refinery expansion and modernization, and even Iranian government, they prepared to invest money and expand it. And then when it come to reality, and the Sri Lankan government had to contribute a very small amount, even government was not prepared to contribute that amount. Finally, even Iranian president came and put the foundation stone, but nothing has happened. But all these are, because one thing is I can say that petroleum corporation is right throughout. Unless one or two people, most of the time it was run by either line 1, line 2 or line 3 by some politicians, not the right person at the right place. But if the right people are the right place, I think it would have been a better industry.
Do you think this institution can be salvaged still?
Definitely, yes. Even today, now this oil issue, I know that there are a lot of discussion going on, because the Russians are prepared to supply Russian light crude oil for Sapugasana refinery, where they can get it oil. But if India can get it, if other countries get from Russia, why not Sri Lanka? And I know that Russians were prepared to give crude oil on concession terms and different payment, not by paying dollars, by either other currencies like either ruble or rupees. But the discussions are still not started, but I think now they are just initiating to start discussion. But by now we would have already imported, and the refinery time plan, they get one crude oil shipment about 90,000 metric ton, and then process about 15 to 20 days, and then stop refinery. The refinery is not made for to run about 20 days or 1 month and stop it. It has been built to run at least 2 to 3 years continuously, right throughout 24 hours, and never stop. But now you get one crude oil and process and stop it. That you never can make a profit. And finally the refinery also can somehow it can get
break down.
damaged. Yes. So
Thank you very much, Mr. Cyril Suduwalla, former acting chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, also former lab and technical head at the CPC. I'd next like to move my attention to the renewable energy man on today's panel, Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe. As I said before, he's no stranger to Face the Nation. He's been here many times before. He's the president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. Jayasinghe, the talk around renewables has been ongoing for decades. The sector within the renewable energy sector that you represent, biogas, bioenergy, if I'm not mistaken, is still the smallest stake in Sri Lanka's energy mix. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Why?
No, I would like to talk on a much broader terms. By the way, I am the past president, not the current president.
I beg
But still, there was a very good reason why we wanted to go in for bioenergy. You know, people like Dr. A. Vijayawardena, the people who started it 30 years ago, their wisdom and things they mentioned here, still valid, and now only is coming to hit us in the face, you see. But I would like to follow up on what you asked from these two gentlemen. To start it, I'll say, government can't run businesses. That's the starting point. And the other one, next point is that, now say for instance, my friends in CEB are vehemently saying that we must be going for tendering and you must have competition. But where the competition on their own? How come we have two massive monopolies who have been losing money head over heels over years and years? But nobody is taking any notice of that one. And we pay all those. You see now this year it will be a 500 billion loss at CEB. Who pays that one? It's the consumers. And it is our fault also that way as consumers to stand by and saying that when they blocked bioenergy for the last 7 years, talking about having to go for tendering. They are utterly idiotic statement, that one, because you can't tender for other people's properties. You see, similarly, they did the same thing for rooftop. Fortunately, government allowed it to go. So that, you see, they say the sauce for the gander should be sauce for the goose. What they preach, they must practice. Fundamentally, I think, to answer your first question, there can't be monopolies. You see, if there are monopolies, it must be very well regulated. And they can't lose money and continue. The point has to come, that it has to be changed. Enough is enough. That has not been done for years and years and years. We continue to do that one, right? That's one thing. Other one is, again, I go back to Dr. A. Vijayawardena, maybe 30 years ago, there was a slide, unfortunately I forgot to bring my computer. You see, we are in what is called, not only Sri Lanka, but the whole world is what's called in the fossil fuel blip. Mrs. Suduwalla mentioned that one. There were no fossil fuels, say, a couple of 100 years ago. There won't be some years back, further also, not because it will run out entirely, but we know that the whole world is going away from fossil. We in Sri Lanka, who doesn't have a drop of oil or piece of coal, went full bang into that one with a utterly, what shall I call, short-sighted way, not wanting to look at the future, not having the wisdom to look at the future, what is going to happen, whether, how this is going to be affect us in the coming years, and also under totally false kind of assumptions, like for instance, some of the long-term generation plan coming from CEB stated that price of coal will not change, rupee will not depreciate. On that basis only, it was predicted that these are the way to go. Now, having said that one, that is the fundamental problem with that one. Another one is also, I'm happy to see Mr. Suduwalla here today. You can't talk about electricity, you must talk about energy, which I have been saying so and this forum for many, many times. Must be, I've been talking to that. Now, right now, you see out there you have seen that energy is really been recognized in the full capacity. All three, electricity, petroleum, and also the cooking fuel. All three have come, those are fundamental source of energy. We never looked at it holistically. But I mean, I can go on talking about this, the past, but I would like to make this opportunity to see what do we do now? How do we get out of this hole? It is possible, and for that one we must have a lot of wisdom and a lot of courage, and also our people, whole nation must accept we are back to the wall. It's not a plain wall with a lot of spikes on it. So there is lots of hurt. You will have to accept that one. If you do that one, then we can get out of it. Then coming back to your original question, I talk about renewable energy all the time, but I would like to really rephrase it. I want to talk about indigenous energy. You see?
You're talking about basically Sri Lanka achieving energy independence.
The fact of the matter is that we must use our own resources. That is what you mean by indigenous energy. And also, if you talk about a nation's security, energy security is as important as food security or the sort of military and other kind of things. You see, but we ignore that completely. We are totally in the hands of our outsiders. And what security can you talk about? Same thing happened in food to some extent, but here this is a glowing example of where we put ourselves in such a false situation and we are paying our price for it. Now, but I would like to be looking at the present crisis. It is definitely a crisis bigger than anything we have faced before, in the different point of view, saying how do we make an opportunity out of this crisis. You see, there are two fortunate things that have happened at the present point. One is that we have a single ministry for power and energy, petroleum as well. Unfortunately, nobody knows under whom the LPG supplies. Nobody, just don't simply anybody responsible about it. And there are nobody from the government per se.
LPG is under the finance ministry.
Is it? I don't know, but I don't see anybody from finance ministry coming and saying anything about the LPG supplies. Occasionally, the chairman comes and says something.
As per the last gazette that I was privy to, Litrogas, the state LPG corporation, is gazetted under the finance ministry.
Yeah, but who looks after the LUF gas? I mean, who's sort of
LUF gas is a private entity.
I know, but there must be somebody monitoring it, no?
Well, if Litro is being handled by the finance
That's
ministry,
exactly.
then I guess we should ask the finance minister what's happening with
You have hit the nail on the head. You see, there are nobody responsible for energy, and it is run on its own. You see, so there no wonder we are in this kind of mess. So, but are we ready to do something different? At least now. I was listening to the young minister yesterday, and I was quite impressed. After a long time, I have heard a minister who has tried and I think successfully absorbed the reality of it, what is in the ground situation, and he's talking about pragmatic way of doing things. You see, otherwise, trying
Mr. Jaisingh, what's your position on the recently passed the act, which I think one of the biggest problems that people had.
That's a made-up problem. Made-up problem, my friend might not agree, but that's a made-up problem designed primarily to block the development of renewable energy.
But do you disagree with, for example, I think it was Dr. Harsha De Silva that tried to introduce an amendment that it's fine. Let's have renewable energy up to 10 megawatts without competitive bidding, but beyond 10 megawatts, then you need to have competitive bidding to prevent corruption.
Well,
you disagree with that amendment?
This amendment does not change that one. You see, it doesn't change
because right
at
now
all.
there's no competitive bidding, right?
Yes, everything else has to go for competitive bidding. Actually, it should be not 10 megawatts, 25 megawatts according to the Act, but for whatever reason, we have said 10 megawatts, fine. But what I'm trying to get at is, I be careful about my words, somebody went and made sure that the number 13 amendment, 2013 amendment, Act number 31, that was done because 2009 was totally useless Act. Because so much of discrepancies and various things like that one, that required amendment because otherwise renewables couldn't have come at all. So, but when in doing so, willingly or otherwise, somebody put in a little bit of a virus. But that did not prevent CEB, I must always that, till 2015 from allowing renewables to go ahead. We did a lot. Most of these mini hydros that Professor talked about happened in that period of time. There was absolutely no reason, no objection from CEB to doing that, and they were very helpful, I must say. In end of 2015, for a particular reason, one particular officer came to head office, and he used this one, and I take my
What was the reason?
What?
You said for a particular
I'll
reason.
tell you, the reason is because the Sampur project was cancelled for a very good reason. So, but he took it out on the renewable energy sector, which was totally wrong.
Who's this official you're referring to?
Well, I shouldn't mention name, a senior officer who was in charge of the Sampur project, who came back to head office and blocked it entirely from that. Now, that is not what I'm talking about. For 7 years, no minister, no secretary, no anybody was ready to take it up and try and solve it. Okay, if there's a problem with the act, you go and change it. They won't do that one. In my opinion, that change, there was no requirement for a change. If somebody took the trouble to take it to a proper lawyer and ask him what is meaning of this, they would have said there are no problem here. There are no reason for CEB to insist on going for tendering for those 4 segments which were excluded from tendering. Like you say that the 4 segments are, first segment which created this problem was saying that those projects which were included in the long-term generation prevailing on the day before that act were supposed to go ahead without tender. Next is what was approved by the SEA, Sustainable Energy Authority. Next was what is called the government-to-government projects. There are some problems with there, but still that was the original this thing. Next is under complete disaster situation where you can't spend time on tendering. Those were the 4 that were excluded. They still remain so, right? This recent amendment did not change any of those things. You see, all it was, they added the word "or" to make sure that false reasons given were removed forever, right? But on the other hand, there are some objection I make in the Act clause number 9C or something like that, 9(1) subsection C. There was a requirement that power generation should be done either by the CEB or by a local authority or by a company in which 51% of the shares must be held by the government. Right? Now that was rather restrictive. But actually that, although it was there, nobody paid any attention. There are enough of projects that are done by private sector also, bigger projects also. Right? But that was removed completely, which I don't like. Because that opens the door complete for anybody to come and do it. Now I go back to what I said, energy industry must be controlled by Sri Lanka, even if not, I'm welcome to have foreign investors coming in, but we must have a degree of control. And also, it is an opportunity. Energy industry is a huge opportunity for the economy, total economy. You see, usual.
But Mr. Jaisingh, when you speak about control, because I think there's almost a bit of paradox, because you said earlier that there needs to be competition and you can't have monopolies.
Yes.
Because I think what we're seeing the results, what we're seeing today are the results of people trying to unnecessarily maintain control.
By whom? What do you mean?
By not individuals, but by the entities themselves.
Yes,
like
yes,
entities themselves, the monopolies themselves trying to maintain control.
No, that's why I started by saying you can't have monopolies. You see, if you have monopoly, there must be very strict regulation, which is not happening now.
So when you say that there should be control, you're referring to control by an independent authority,
yes,
an independent commission.
When you say independent, it must be totally independent. You can't
impartial and independent.
It's a must. So this is the reason why we are in this mess. But I like to look at it much more positively. What do we do now? Fortunately, now nobody is saying renewables are expensive, you can't afford that and that sort of. You see, with coal gone up to $300 a ton and oil at 120, and with our rupee at 365, nobody in their right minds would say that. Unfortunately, nobody is saying so. And they are willing to admit that renewables are the cheapest option. Particularly, now, this again, I also get trapped into this in talking about electricity. Our bigger problem is not electricity, it's transport. We have done absolutely nothing about transport. And also that's why we live like frogs in the well, without wanting to know what is happening outside. We also go and pick things we want to talk about rather than the total picture of it. We are unable to look at this one. We will continue to be that way unless we have somebody in authority who can look at the total picture.
Thank you very much.
When you do that one, we'll get somewhere.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaisingh. I think we're like the frogs in the boiling pot of water that don't realize that the water is, well, not just starting to boil, it's boiling. So before I actually open the floor for questions from our journalists today, Professor Vijaypala, would you like to take a minute maybe to respond to what Mr. Jaisingh was saying?
I would like to answer that first question that you posed to Mr. Jaisingh. That is, why bio-industry has been so small, whereas other sectors have, because it was open for all the sectors from the very beginning. And in 2007, the open tariff was given for that separate tariff, and therefore, why it didn't happen. So that is, there are a variety of reasons. One reason I see is the logistics involved in sourcing firewood and other things. I mean, the grid area, continuous supplies. We also, as a company, when I worked in a company, we tried to plant it Valapani, and also there were multiple reasons for that being unsuccessful and so on. So it had to be abandoned. But now we looked at University of Moratu. We did a research recently with the engineer from Noracholi power plant. They are looking at the possibility of adding about 5% biomatter, that is glyceria, together with coal.
Okay.
You know that coal, we use 2.5 million tons of coal a year. So 5% means 125,000 metric tons of equivalent coal. So equivalent to maybe double or maybe about say 60% more for the biomass, because the biomass has less calorific value. So it opens up a huge market, and as per our research, it is possible. 5% adding powdered biomass to the powdered coal just at the entry point to the boiler, and so if that can be done, that will be a huge contribution in the bio industry, and also replacing some of the.
May I interrupt you for just for a minute?
Yes.
I went and made this proposal to the Chinese before the Unit 1 was commissioned. You see, before Unit 1 and Noracholi, I went there, I talked to the
to mix biomass with the coal.
Yes, I wanted 5% actually.
Yes, okay.
I worked out all the numbers, how many tons of biomass is required and where can you get it, all that were given.
And what happened to that in China?
Oh, Chinese didn't want to even talk about it.
No, those days they were on a separate target, you know, that was politically involved and all that. But now the plant has been running.
That is 10 years ago.
Yeah,
but nobody is going to look at it.
But now if we look at as per our economic calculations, even if we transport biomaterial from, say, as far as Batiklo up to Noracholi, but still it makes economic sense.
There's still savings on it.
It's savings. So these things could be done, and that will be a big jump in the biomaterial market.
Just to add to Professor Vijaypala, now as he said 5%, the petroleum industry also long before we have decided, and the government had decided to add 5% alcohol to the petrol as an octane booster. At the same time, 15% allowed to add the biodiesel to the diesel. So if you had done it, at least that 5 to 10% imports would have been locally produced.
Yeah, one more point. Yeah. We didn't do it blindly. We learned from Europe, especially in UK and so on. They have some of the coal power plants, they have 100% converted to biomass in Europe and UK. So that there is about the possibility, there is no doubt.
Technology, there is absolutely no.
Yes, can be done. So I think under these conditions, these are things that the CEB, they have a research branch and so on, they should look at and try to implement, actually, rather than, rejecting. And when you make a proposal, normal CEB approach is most comfortable approach. That is, oh, that cannot be done. Yes. I have made many proposals, unfortunately, but the answer is that.
I think Professor Vijaypala, that's probably true of most of the public sector, no?
Yes. In the next round, I will come with another example.
Yes. No, thank you very much. I'll open the floor for questions. We're meant to be, I'm joined by Shehan Ranatunga, of course. I'm also meant to be joined by Deshang Gonawala. Shehan, he's MIA. You think he might be stuck in a fuel queue?
I think that's probably what it is. Challenge in terms of arriving on the set with the crisis.
The challenges that we face
The
today.
challenges that we face.
Go ahead, Shehan.
Thank you, Darleen. I'd like to first open my questions with Professor Anu Vijaypala. Professor, the Energy Minister, Kanchana Wijayasekara, he issued a tweet recently, and he said, "I'm prepared to make the changes necessary. Sri Lanka will never move forward with pressurized unions that are inefficient and a burden on the economy. Many unions don't fight for the betterment of their trade or their institute, but for the betterment of themselves." Now, there's been a long standing debate about unions and all of that. Could I get your response to what the minister is saying here?
I agree with the minister. I agree with the minister in two ways, but having two comments also. One comment is the government and the minister should never be at the mercy of the unions, which happens here occasionally, often. In many trades, not only in the electricity sector, in many sectors, sometimes the government ends with at the mercy of the unions and succumbing to their demands. And on the other hand, now on some issues, the unions have protected government institutions when rather silly politicians try to do, awkward things to these institutions. So there are at times they have got together and because they are all public property. At times there have been attempts by the politicians at different time scales in the past who have tried to misuse state property in big scale, and so those things were prevented by the union. So at the same, but I don't know how the scale goes on, which is more having weight and so on. But still, I think I agree with Mr. Jayasinghe that the regulation. But electricity sector is the only sector now at least regulated up to this level. Now, petroleum sector is completely unregulated. So, but electricity sector is regulated to some extent, but that full benefit doesn't come because of the shortcomings in the regulatory activities, and also by the intervention of the government. Government doesn't permit regulator to work independently and regulate the institution, and government controls it, and the regulator is not free to do it. For example, CEB, today I checked their balance sheet, they have outstanding payments of 630 billion rupees. 630 billion rupees to various parties.
That CEB has to make.
CEB has to pay 630 billion rupees today, right, to different parties. And you can see how it accumulated. One reason is they were not given a cost reflective tariff. That is the main reason. But there are other reasons, corruption, inefficiency, all these things are within that. But the major reason is since inception of the regulatory process, there was never a cost reflective tariff as such, because it should be the case. What we should pay, what it costs. Otherwise, somebody else will not pay continuously. Of course, there are vulnerable groups for whom we should give subsidies and all that they should be identified. And in Sri Lanka, in general, I will make a comment that that general subsidies should be removed.
Exactly.
General subsidies. Now, if you give subsidies to diesel, everybody, even the richest person, when he pumps diesel, he gets that subsidy. Electricity subsidy, even the richest person enjoy now. Even the richest person, if he uses block tariff, he will get the benefit of the lowest tariff, and that is really wrong. And therefore, it should be given to the needy only, and then CB should be given a cost reflective tariff and to take it out. And so your question that the minister's statement is correct, but these institutions are very sensitive institutions, therefore they should be prudently handled. I think the union should change now. They should change their mindset so that they can work in this current world. They can't work in the same style they worked in, say, 50 years back, by holding the government or the minister to the ransom.
Not 50 years, just 5 years back.
Yes, so they can't work like that. They have to change to the modern world, and you know that CEB in my opinion can't operate in this mode. They must be made at least localized companies, government owned companies. You know, LECO is a success story. Their management is more efficient and their customers are happier, and their system is better. They are making profits, and they are managing it well. And why can't we make the similar systems in CEB? Many people said CEB now LECO will be privatized and the private people will take over, but it has not happened. It is 100% government owned. Not a single share is on private hands. So we can do the same with the CEB, and we should be ready. CEB engineers and other unions should be ready to face that.
In fact, you said, Professor, that the CEB union shouldn't hold the ministers to ransom, but actually it's the public who feels held to ransom. Whenever they protest and then cut electricity, people are wondering, why are we made to suffer for this? So public opinion of the unions is not at a good place.
Good place. And also now even the power cuts, CEB is doing 30-year-old style. In 1996 also, what they did was they made a roster and made zones and cut power. Today I'm wondering whether they use the same old roster also, right? The same style. I have given them many ideas to do it in newer ways, which they don't do. They don't want to change even that. They do it in old style.
Mr. Suduwala, can we say the same of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation as well? Because we've seen that even with CPETCO in the past, you've seen there are powerful unions at work that sometimes could have or allegedly have political affiliations. Steps are taken. Is this a problem with CPETCO as well?
Yes, political influence in CPC is huge, and it affects the development. And some, of course, in some unions they contribute well-being of the organization, and sometimes, but the most of them are they are concerned about the benefit always, and only few contribute for development of the institution. And as Professor Vijaypala said, the regulator in the petroleum sector also very important. The unions also, union has of course the limited activities inside the CPC, but not having the regulator in the petroleum sector also has a big impact on development, and this even the present crisis. And because if the regulator is there, now this will now look at the CPC now. CPC now what they do is they do the same the process, nothing new, or they are not trying any other method of supplying fuel. They know when they are running short of money, what they do is when all the tanks are dried up, they are awaiting the imported the super tankers or tankers, and then tanker usually when even you have the thousands of tanks even up to Singapore filled with the petrol and diesel, nobody will be able to get rid of these queues. You know why? If suppose we have only one or two system of unloading, one is at SPBM or the SPM at Muthurajala, other system is the Dolphin Pier at the Colombo Harbour. The third one is China Bay or Hambantota is very little use. But now the system is what they do is they diesel or petrol, they have number of the ships anchor outside and they call one by one, and to how many days it takes. Normally you connect it to
this sounds like a very inefficient system.
Very inefficient. Now I am trying to explain why it is inefficient, how we should overcome it. Now we have made the proposal, but nobody listened to it. Now for this system, even you have one ship you connect to the Dolphin Pier and then start pumping. You have to get the sample tested, and it takes about at least 10 to 12 hours, and then start pumping. Pumping takes at least 1 day or 1.5 days, and then you have to give some at least 10 hours for settling the tank, and then you load into the bowser through the gantry. It also takes some time. After carrying the bowser, then you take to the filling station, and it takes time, and immediately you can't take it once you unload. Then again you wait for settling, then only you start pumping. So with this one at least it takes 3 or 3.5 days. So what happens is, unless you have the limited stock stored in Muthurajavala, Kolonna or other the outstation the depots, no way that you can get rid of queues. So to overcome this one, what I propose to the management, but they are not listening it. But there are systems in the world. They have the bonded facilities. For example, one bonded facility is the Lanka Marine Services. Earlier it was CPC's the bunker services, but now Lanka Marine Services is a bonded facility. So they have always stocks, and then like that CPC you can have either Muthurajavala or Sapagaskanda terminal or Sapagaskanda refinery or Kolonnava or China Bay, somewhere the bonded facility. So we can hire it to any refinery outside the world. So they will bring and store it, rather than selling through the ship, they can sell it anytime we want, we can get it. So it won't, that will reduce time, and we will always get the fuel filled in our tanks. So that will not cost anything. But you need money, but you need only the system to operate that type of system. But what the today's government or the people are crying that we don't have money, so the ships are anchored outside. And recently I saw that 120, the one ship carrying the petrol came with a very big tanker.
So in a nutshell, Mr. Suduwala, what you're saying is in this process as well, we need a system change. You have an idea for a system change, but no one is listening to your idea for the system change.
Yeah, the system. Anyway, of course, we have the whole system. If you have money, of course, you can store sufficient stocks and then maintain. But since you don't have money, you will have to change it to another system. So you don't have money and you don't have the suitable system also. That is the problem. Now you are using whole system with the not having money.
Shan?
In fact, Mr. Suduwala, I just want to follow up with this question. Now, there's talks of rationing fuel,
Yes.
of a system needed to be put into place. The minister himself referred to this, of a rationing system. Is this, in your opinion, something that can be efficiently exercised in Sri Lanka?
Not efficient. Rationing is when there is a scarcity, when there is no oil, of course, like what happened after the Second World War. So when you don't have the rice, you will, they ration it. But since now we are running sort of sufficient oil quantities, the rationing is maybe you can try for some the sectors. But for example, now you see, even now we tried the kerosene subsidy, and the kerosene is a product manufactured in the refineries, not as kerosene, dual purpose kerosene, the same product used for jet fuel and for illuminating kerosene. But jet fuel, the price is almost the price of like a petrol. But we normally get the same jet fuel and sell it as a 70, maybe 80 rupees. But what happened is the other people, some people, they buy kerosene and use for some other purpose. But if you ration it, they use the ration and buy more and more subsidy product. But rationing, of course, is a good tool, but in this, without having sufficient fuel, and when the demand is high, the rationing, of course, you can control some system by selecting various papers, but there are some other options better than rationing.
But may I also add to that?
Yes,
you know
please.
that under the present conditions, this is short term, maybe 3 months, 6 months. I think we have to do something on rationing, because we are not likely to get enough fuel. Because the dollar problem will not solve immediately for the next 3-4 months. India may support, China may support, and they may not also. So we will run into even deeper shortages of diesel, petrol and gas in the coming 3-4 months. Therefore, government must identify the priority of supplying of this. Which sectors should be supplied first? We have a dollar crisis. Therefore, all dollar earning institutions, business, should be provided with the number 1 priority, with both electricity and fuels and even gas if required. Then they should look at how much diesel, how much petrol can be afforded by us from the loans or whatever the foreign income we are getting, and then look at our vehicle fleet and see in the priority order our trains, our buses, public transport must be given priority, and they must allocate sufficient amount to them. And then should see how much diesel is left, how much petrol is left, look at the vehicle fleet and say, okay, for a diesel car or petrol car, we can use 50 liters a month. That's all. So you manage with that. For motorbike, whatever, the 20 liters. and you have to manage, you will get only that. So they have to make some app or something, you know, the IT is there these days, and ask them to register whatever as the minister says, and say we can give you only this. See, we have a problem of this magnitude. Therefore, then that will immediately stop the queues. The biggest problem this country has now is everywhere the queues, kilometers long queues. So they should take these people out of the queues and let them be at home. And when I know I get only 30 liters, I will get myself adjusted. Partly I will bicycle or whatever, and partly I will not go long distances. I will go on for the essential work and manage it. So until we come, because this crisis, the magnitude of this crisis, I don't know whether even the heads of the states have understood.
Professor Vijaypala, this is something that puzzles me, right? Because you know that there is no fuel coming, but yet you've kept people waiting in queues for days. I mean, when the coronavirus, when the pandemic was at its height, when lockdowns were all over, we're coming up with solutions quite fast. You know, odd numbered ID cards, you're allowed to go out on these days. Even numbered ID cards, you're allowed to go out on these days. There was I mean, I won't say innovative solutions, maybe somewhat pragmatic. People were thinking of solutions to lessen the burden on the public, to enable the public to move around in a somewhat safe manner. But with this, it looks like, you know, the government is acting almost like, you know, like the cattle that's caught in the headlights of a car, with no idea what to do. Like fight or flight, and they're just standing still.
Can I comment on that part?
Yes, sir.
Now, up till yesterday, I had absolutely no hope of anything happening. But the press conference by the Minister Kanchan yesterday, he came up with all what we were all always asking the same question. Why should somebody wait in a queue without any clue whether he's going to get his fuel at all? You see, there shouldn't be, that should not have happened. That nobody looked at it. Now, this is what I addressed sometime back in one of my articles. Said, oh, energy sector is a headless chicken. There are nobody in charge, nobody doing anything about it. So that's why I started by saying that I'm glad that power and energy is now under one minister, and I'm very, very pleased that I see a minister who.
But Mr. Jayasinghe, even yesterday, he mentioned it. To his credit, he did mention these are the kinds of solutions that we're looking at. But he didn't announce any actual measures that are going to be.
I met him today.
Okay.
I met him today.
Because it felt like quite ambiguous.
Already on the cards. Already on the cards. He's working on that one. So I think within a few days, I think a lot of things should change. You see, that's what I said. I have some hope now.
I hope things change really fast, because the frustrations in these queues.
Taking these decisions is wrong. Can see they take a decision, reverse is. Remember recently they introduced a website saying where the petrol stations. Ridiculous. And then after 1 week they say we withdraw that. What nonsense. I have no any confidence. This way they can bring solutions. They must have some, you know, some group crisis to manage this crisis.
Yes.
A crisis management group. Minister can appoint and minister can give them the task and he can oversee. But can a minister single-handedly handle a crisis?
No.
No, he cannot.
No, Andra, at least.
He should be supported by all institutions, and there should be a responsible group who will take and who will work 24 hours to find a solution, because this problem is of that magnitude for the survival of the country.
Now, this is where I always point fingers at not only the politicians, to our professionals who have not done their job at all.
The officials, you mean?
Very, very definitely. Yeah. And also, something else today I mentioned to the minister also. You see, why do we have these queues? Because over the last few months, you know, January onwards, we were hell-bent on somehow or other supplying electricity. And we use huge amount of oil to run electricity, which should not have happened at all. Now, come May, we saw a change. There were some days we ran without any oil at all. I told the minister, for God's sake, don't allow it to go back. Now that Norocholi plant 2 is down, don't let that be excuse to go back into that. I told him today, actually I said, for God's sake, don't give a drop of oil to CEB. He of course laughed at me, said, how can I manage without long car cuts? Now, I agree with Anura, it's a crisis situation. People must accept. You can't expect to have the same kind of free usage, and you know that is the whole problem of the whole country. No, we were living way beyond our means. We were living on loans. All these years we have been doing that one. Last
loans, I will let you, loans of high interest.
Yes, actually.
Not the soft loans once we used
and when we are earning $12 billion, we are spending $22 billion. So it can't persist, it has to. So we have to pay. We people also have to pay for that kind of sin created by the politicians, so-called leaders who should not have done
But
it.
Mr. Jaising, the problem is they don't seem to be paying.
Who?
You said they created the problems.
Yes.
They are sustaining those problems.
Well,
they don't seem to be paying.
That is why they
I mean, on the one hand, they're telling the people, you know, bicycle padinna, batala hitawanna.
What they would.
What are they doing?
I know, quite right.
What are the sacrifices that are being made by?
That is exactly what everybody says, those young people.
But no sector has accountability.
That's right.
Not the power sector, not any other sector.
Nobody is responsible.
Nobody is responsible for the decisions they take. For example, this the present dollar crisis. Who created it? This government, when it came to power, they had $7.5 billion
surplus.
Right? Surplus, and now they 1 week back they said it's $5 million. Right? How can
anyway the rationing and the queues are not you cannot see the reduction anyway today day and day it's getting longer. So the reason you will have to say why. So first we have to analyze why the queues are getting longer. So if the government say okay they supply fuel, they have enough fuel, but we can see the bows are going here and there. But the reason why people they have become panic, and usually you get half tank or quarter tank usually run it. But nowadays
everyone full tank.
Most of the people, if myself, they normally keep at least 3/4 or full tank. So they, anyway, then there will be an end. What happens is now if you go to a filling station now, you can see one motorcycle, the motorcycle queue, and then the three-wheeler, and then the motor car, and then the trucks, and same filling station, 5 the queues, and it goes one road, it goes the motorcycle, another road, three-wheeler. So we'll have to analyze the situation and make the right remedy. I think the fuel shortage itself is not the case, but we are not managing it properly.
I think
Mr. Sudwali, this is where the thinking. This is where the thinking doesn't make sense.
There is no one managing the crisis.
That is what I am going to write. So exactly, no one is managing. They are buying. Somehow they buy it and say okay, selling bowsers. It will not solve this problem. So you have to find at least see the whether rationing is practical, or see whether you get the one side, the two side, and we manage.
Mr. Sudwala, for example, take a simple thing like today. When I was coming into Colombo, I noticed, especially as you get closer to Colombo, you notice all these SUVs, what you call gas guzzlers, on the roads, right? These are extremely inefficient vehicles. You know, you get like maybe 4 kilometers to a liter. 5 if you're lucky.
No, those things, of course, the policymakers has to make a decision.
And this is not just the politicians, defenders, and whatnots, right? This is like even people. Maybe there's a specific purpose where they need to take like the SUV out on carpeted roads. But what I don't understand is on the other hand, you have like, in terms of public transport, the decisions that are being made is, because of the lack of fuel, we are going to reduce the number of times that the train is going to be going. So then people are packed into trains, like sardines. Worse than sardines. I don't think even in a sardine can you'll get that much fish packed into it, right? Someone actually, it's not laughing, maybe someone actually like fell off and like, it's a very dangerous situation. Shouldn't the decision be to put more people into public transport and get people out of their vehicles? I mean, that seems like common sense and logic to me.
This is the whole story. We have been saying this one for years and years. Professor Kumarage every day comes and says that we are doing the wrong thing. We should be having so much more for public. No, the consumption of diesel or the petroleum, you see, mostly goes to private vehicles which are running just one person in a huge SUV or something like that. Whereas the public transport, which takes 50% of the people, consumes only 5%. You see, now what I am saying is, we are ready to point fingers at the politicians, but one fault is politicians poke their finger into things which they don't know, right? But it is the fault of the people, fault of the officers, who are supposed to know, who are supposed to be learned, and professors and doctors and various.
Well, I mean, we've had plenty of officials also who over the years have been decrying the lack of investment in improving the public transport infrastructure. And politicians also have been happy to go along with, I mean, I can't even remember when the last major investment in public transport infrastructure was. I'm not referring to expressways and elevated expressways and those things. Like, I'm drawing trains, light rails, buses, trams, streetcar, whatever, public transport. Quality, affordable public transport.
Yeah, trains, I think the biggest issue is
trains primarily, right?
Yeah, they don't have a cost-reflective tariff.
That's
they are making continuous big losses every year. They live on the treasury.
No, that is where the people must now accept.
We have to pay for what we get.
Yeah, exactly.
Right price.
Yeah.
There is no one to come and give us free. Then we have to pay in another way. That is what we are paying today.
Yeah.
What we are laboring in the queues. We are paying the price differently now, which we should have paid in a cost-reflective way for what we purchased.
Over the years.
Now institutions have gone bankrupt, CB has gone bankrupt, and so is CPC. And why? We have not paid, and thereby we have made ways of others to come in and even do corrupt things in this. And this railway will never come out without giving a proper tariff.
Gentlemen, I'm sure you're in the midst of all this. You would also agree that if I was to speak on behalf of the government, but there's nobody from the government side to come and speak today, we can't deny that there is a crisis globally. I mean, not to mention COVID. Now, COVID, since then we have the Ukraine-Russia war, yes. And that is impacting the world. You've got inflation, you've got food crisis, the effect on cost of oil and so on. So when you look at this situation, it seems that there's a lot on the government's plate. And so perhaps, do you think that public is maybe being a little bit too harsh, bit too critical, maybe then to give them more time to be able to resolve and battle these multiple fires?
I think the people got the multiple problems onto them simultaneously. They got gas issue, they got petrol issue, they got electricity issue, they got the food issue, food scarcity issue, all simultaneously attacking every family, especially the vulnerable sectors. So they don't have a time or energy to look at the government's issues. Government is there to solve the problems of the people, and I don't see that the government is right now doing it, and they could have done this better. Government could manage this better even under the given circumstances, but I don't see that a good intelligent group is working on that business. Everybody is coming and telling what will happen next month. Next month will be worse.
That's all we hear.
Yeah, so the people knows that it's getting worse every day. But there is no leaders are required to come and tell it over the TV and waste your time. They want a solution. So they should, even the people will like rationing, I think, if they are given a sufficient amount. Now, because of without rationing, now there is a black market created, where people go round and round and round and buy and sell.
Yeah. The rationing, of course, I agree with the rationing concept, but not the way that what we ration in the rice. But this rationing is, as Professor said, we have to make the available product and distribute among the needy people. And the way that maybe the fisheries people may need more kerosene, and maybe the fleet owners, bus owners may need the more diesel, and some fuel maybe needs another category of people. And when that is why I said, now the situation is, now normal days you need about 3,000, earlier 3,500, 4,000 metric tons per day petrol, and the diesel about 6,000. But now sometimes every day, sometimes it goes up to 8,000 diesel and even 5,000 petrol. It's very, 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 very strange. because most of the people they have the fuel inside their tanks at least 3/4, but they are on the queue. So therefore we have to segregate, and that is why I said we analyze system and at least make in about 10-15 years before we had about half of the filling station, and today we have the CPC about 1,300 odd the filling stations, and LIOC has more than the 250 filling stations. And if you go back to about 10 years before, we didn't have even half of that. So what we should do is, now I started that same filling station. You can see the motorcycle, three-wheelers, cars, trucks, everything. So we will somehow segregate and name few filling stations, and this rationing, I am going to rationing, not the rationing. Okay, this particular filling station, or even days only diesel. Then only diesel will come. The about 1/4 can take it out, and you find the next filling station. Okay, petrol for that particular day. Then the petrol will go to that filling station, and then that is one solution. At the same time, when you go to kerosene rationing, kerosene, of course, I start that one. We are selling at a very low price, but it is misused by a lot of people. So sell kerosene also at the same price. Give the subsidy, I mean coupon, to needy people, like what we ration in the rice after the Second World War. You give some ration, we call coupon ration, and then they can use that one as money. But giving the money subsidy, and always it's a burden to the treasury. And distribution, we'll have to think about the new system, old system, the same way you send the bouncers filling, and everybody queuing up all fillings. Now if you go to the nearby, you get about 10 filling stations. Some people stay about 2-3 days. All the vehicles, if you count the number of vehicles on the road, I think none of the residential, about 90% now on the road, because they are just parked. Because if you name few filling station and some even days, odd days, these are the places, then probably you will be able to reduce the queue. And then you maybe quantity also can be reduced, because when we are running short of product, when you don't have money, we should have some alternative system. So alternative system should, anyway, that should be taken very intelligent. Otherwise, you will get if you get the bad feedback, then that will be another issue. So
in fairness to the minister, this is exactly what he has proposed yesterday. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that will succeed. For example, he said no, he's already arranged for the private buses also to get filled up in the depots, so they don't have to go into these queues. And also he had made arrangements, even the tourist buses to take them from there. Yeah, so identified the important sectors, and primarily I would say diesel is the issue. You see, we have to make sure that diesel is provided, because that's the one that runs the economy, not petrol. You see, so people who are using petrol is there for comfort and luxury. They must be ready to take the hit. So prioritizing on diesel, so that it goes to the correct sector, so that there are
So Mr. Jayasinghe, there are plenty of people who use diesel also for luxury and comfort.
Not so much. That's exactly what Andrew was saying. You can't give them subsidized this thing, you see, to run a hefty vehicle. That's a different problem. But some people will do,
yes,
right?
yeah.
But again, you see what Minister is proposing. I like what he said. That's what I'm repeating that one. What he said, I hope he is successful in that one. He identified the sector that should receive it. I personally have a problem. My company, I have now shut down half the operation because I can't get diesel. Because my vehicles, the trucks run on that. My machines run on diesel. Even the poor farmers are in a big trouble. So at least on paper, what he has said goes more like on what this one. But important thing is, people who are in private sector.
As with all things as with all things to do with plans that come from the public sector and in politicians, you know, the proof of the pudding will be easy.
Of course, that's what I've said. I'm hoping
the trick is in the implementation.
I do hope.
I mean, it's good to be hopeful, but I think that in Sri Lanka's case, in these days, let's not be all doom and gloom. Let's agree to be hopeful with Mr. Jayasinghe.
I really would
but
like
I think Mr. Vijaypala, Professor Vijaypala actually gave the pessimistic view on that, is that he has no confidence that this will be done.
no, but we can't live like that. Then we will all be. We
must have a better approach.
Yeah.
A better approach.
Better approach. And a practical one.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is making bad experiments and coming back to the same point. We can't go on making mistakes.
Yeah.
And see, since January we had this issue. This is half a year gone. We had this issue from January, fuel shortages. And still we are where we are. Have we any system developed?
Up to now, nothing
Only thing happened was queues got longer and longer. That's the only thing happened from January to today. So I don't know whether the minister's formula will work. So much the better for the country and for all of us. But we are taking two risks on depending upon few individuals and trying to get solutions. It should be systematically approached.
Speaking of a better approach, Professor Vijaypala, actually Mr. Jayasinghe, what approach needs to be taken with regard to the gas crisis? Now we talked about the power issue, we talked about the fuel issue. Now there's a gas crisis.
One problem, we have a solution which does not depend on the government. So fortunately, you see, that is one issue that people must take on. I don't know whether you might have seen now yesterday, Maubima carried an article, you see, based on what I provided them, of the option of getting away from gas. Gas was also a problem imposed on us unnecessarily. You see, we had some gas coming from the refinery. As long as the gas, I had no objection because it's our own thing. But what the problem was that they started importing gas and giving it to the people who never wanted gas. You see, remotest places in the country, you see big boards promoting people use gas, whereas they were happily using firewood for their cooking. And they were put onto this trap. Again, we were brought and put onto this trap. So of course, there are people in the high-rise flats and all those things who can't use.
Is it sustainable for people to keep using firewood?
Yes, you have to make it sustainable. You see, I don't mean using those 3 stones and putting fire. That era is gone. Now, this person, Vijaypala asked me how is NERD. Now, NERD has failed because they have the technology, but they did not take the trouble to promote it. But fortunately, large number of people have come up with solutions. Very acceptable stoves.
Clean burning.
Yeah.
Wood chip.
Actually they are promoting, one small mistake they are making is, they are promoting for use of coconut shell charcoal, which is a scarce resource. And it's a very valuable resource, too valuable to be burnt, right? But they have done the equipment, so they are fine. But what I'm saying is, the very same stoves can work beautifully with wood charcoal.
Yeah.
Wood charcoal is our answer, you see. And also, you know, we spent something like $250 million for import of charcoal, import of LPG. At the present day prices, that will go up to close to 400, right? Now, all that $400 million worth of energy should be going back to our people who can produce the wood and wood charcoal. You see, but there's no system. I'm personally trying to get people interested in that. If you do that one, the problem is solved.
Yeah, get the example of Sri Lanka is an agricultural country.
Yeah.
And look at the Brazil. Brazil being an agricultural country, they 100% depend. They have fossil fuel, but the most 90% of the petrol vehicles are converted to run by alcohol, and they have the sugar industry, and they convert total molasses into alcohol. And if you go to anywhere in the Brazil, you will get the fossil fuel pump and the alcohol pump. Because in our normal vehicle you can't use the alcohol, but few modifications, most of the vehicles are run by alcohol. And Sri Lanka import about 670 metric tons of sugar every year, and we have only small sugar industry. And there are a lot of proposals came to Vavuniya sugar, the North sugar factories. We would have gone for sugar industry and produced a lot of alcohol and go for renewable energy and renewable fuel also. But anyway, it's a long-term project, but Sri Lanka is...
The problem here is that you're talking about things with multiple variables, right? Because you're expanding sugar plantations means greater deforestation. We have our arable land is kind of stretched to its limit if we want to expand our food production any further, which means we have to go cut down the forests.
No, deforestation I am
essentially a good idea.
No, unfortunately,
that is why I said
there are multiple things that we need to consider here. Like the solutions are, I mean, I'm not sure if I agree that the solutions are as simple as Mr. Sidhuwala
you see, this is why I go back to where we are. We are frogs in the well. Apologies to Mr. Sidhuwala. That solution was good 10 years, 20 years ago, not anymore. People have, whole world changed. You see, the primary thing you must, I'm coming back to this transport thing which is ignored segment. When you talk to energy, transport energy is our biggest problem. Solutions are now available, but we are ignoring that too, right? We are good examples of it. We are not waiting in the queues because we run electric cars. Transport has to be electric. Do you know there is a Sri Lanka energy policy published in 2019 has a clause to say by 2023, 25% of our light vehicles should be electric. And CEB is supposed to put some 25 charging stations. It remains just a piece of paper. And also the whole world is going electric.
Shall I add to that with some numbers? Yes. Now if you take a diesel liter and put a conventional car, you can get 10-12 kilometers per liter on average. Sometimes it will do more, sometimes it will do less, but on average about 10-12 kilometers per liter. But if you put the same liter of diesel to a combined cycle power plant, you can get 5 kilowatt hours, 5 electricity units out of that. If you put the same diesel liter into a combined cycle power plant, you get 5 kilowatt hours or 5 electricity unit. If you put that 5 electricity unit to an electric car, you get at least 25-30 kilometers.
Yeah.
Right?
The picture is
25-30 kilometers.
Much rosier than that.
Right?
The efficiency.
And you can see that same liter, imported liter, you put to a conventional car, 10-12 kilometers. If you put to an electric car, at least 20 plus, 25 kilometers plus.
And some e-mobility in some countries, for example, Germany, Berlin, and they have about almost 100% electric cars. And Sri Lanka, I think just few years before, the budget proposal came to replace entire the three-wheelers to replace three-wheelers by electric. But not a single three-wheeler we have seen replaced.
Yeah, so that's right. And also what you must remember is, we are so blessed, this country, but we are so unfortunate also. We are unable to see any of those things. Now say talk about transport, which is very, very important. This thing is not a short-term thing that must happen. Is that we don't have to put the diesel to run this part. We have the solar panel on your roof, which will do your charging. Yes. So absolutely zero cost. You see, that is something that to come in the future. But to come back to what I was started talking about, now because of that, this thing, there are at least 100 calls to me. What do I do? How do I do this? The problem was, like I told you, equipment is there, possibility is there. People know that it can be used, but then we are chasing a wrong source of fuel for that. That is coconut shell charcoal. Just to give you the numbers, we produce something like 95,000 tons of coconut shell charcoal, which is not enough for our activated carbon company. You see, and our total potential, if every single nut is converted to charcoal, is only 130,000 tons. So that is not a source you should touch at all. But the very same thing can be done with wood. I think you people are too young.
Other biomass.
You would remember Timco. Timco is what wood charcoal that was produced by Timber Corporation. I have spoken to Timber Corporation saying, please do that. And that it doesn't have to be that big scale. We, in our association, we are giving them the technology. How can you make it even small scale your own? But lot of the 50% of the population doesn't have to even to go that far. There are nice, modernized sort of food.
I guess again, Mr. Jaisingh, I think, like I said, there's lots of way because there's also the issue of time. Cooking with wood chip charcoal is more time consuming.
No, it's not.
Use the right device. Use the right device. Yes.
It's the same.
These are misconceptions.
Use the right device.
These are misconceptions.
Yeah,
no, recently,
I think what he says is a point, because convenience-wise, gas may be the easiest.
Yeah.
But you know that you must put the cost,
we don't have gas.
cost aspect also into
We don't
that.
have gas.
Yeah.
Cost aspect, scarcity. When both comes, people will be ready to do a little distance, go a little distance.
You have to extend a little bit. I mean, it's not like just going and switching on.
Yeah.
If you have the gas, and if you have the money, you do that. But I also take objection to that one. I don't accept anybody simply because he has money to use the scarce foreign exchange to import gas and use it for his convenience. He has no right to do that one, because he's taking away the dollars that should go for medicine, or for some essential food, or even for petrol for the time being, or diesel for the time being. They have no right to do that. Right?
But you should also, I mean, to be empathetic to people's plight also, because different people are different conditions. Imagine someone who's working where you're in even if a family or both people working 16-hour-a-day jobs, you might not have the luxury of time to invest in that thing, and then you need convenience.
And also
you can't cut down on the workload because
when things are in crisis, you can't expect the same situation. There are certain concessions.
But you still have to keep working as well, right? Because otherwise you starve.
I think
because then you might have the wood chip stove, but you won't have money to put any food into the wood chip stove.
I think the poor people have bigger issues. Poor people have bigger because they have invested already a gas stove, couple of gas cylinders. And now they are asked to spend another 7,000, 8,000 rupees to buy
gas,
either electric stove or the other stove.
So these things are complicated, you know. But then the government cannot come up and give a support, because the government is also...
The government is asking people to ride bicycles and plant batalas. So there you go. Before we go in for a final break,
perhaps we can discuss this in great detail after the break. But as you said, Mr. Jaisingh, there's no money. So now we're in a situation where we are reaching out to other countries, we're calling for investment, but then that brings into the picture controversial agreements signed. Professor Vijaypala, recently at a COPE meeting, there was a lot of stir that was caused when a former CB chairman made a statement about being pressurized to hand over this Trincomalee wind farm. Is that sort of thing normal for that kind of political pressure on CB chairman?
I think yes. In my time, then they gave me a set of books saying 300 megawatt gas turbine, work on it. I put it in my cupboard and didn't do anything. Then the economic, there's an economic committee those days. Economic committee, one gentleman is saying to the chief, now he has not done. I told him, so show me I showed him the act. Show me how I can do it legally, then I will do it. If I can do it legally, I will do it. Show me how to do it legally. Then everybody shut up. I asked them, are you asking me to do an illegal thing? Right? I simply asked them in front of maybe 50 officers. Then they just withdrew it. But we must have the guts to tell it, right? Guts to tell it.
Integrity in short supply. And on that note, we'll go in for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round of this episode of Face the Nation.
COVID-19 සඳහා ආරක්ෂිත පියවර නිතරම හොඳින් සබන් යොදා දෑත් සෝදන්න. සබන් හෝ විසබීජ නාශක මධ්‍යසාරයක් භාවිතා කර දෑත් පිරිසිදු කරන්න. සෑම විටම අන් අය සමග මීටරයක දුරස්ථභාවයක් පවත්වා ගන්න. හැකි සෑම විටම නිවසේ රැඳී සිටින්න. නිරතුරුවම නිවැරදිව මුඛාවරණ පළඳින්න.
අපිට උනේ ගෞරවනීයත්වයේ නැතිවීමද එහෙම නැත්නම් අපිට බැරි හින්දා තවත් කෙනෙක් අපිව පාලනය කරනවා.
ඇල්ජීරියාවෙන් ප්‍රංශකාරයෝ ගියාට වැඩක් නැහැ කිව්වා. මොකද හේතුව ප්‍රංශ සංස්කෘතිය, ප්‍රංශ දේශපාලනය තනිකරම තියෙන කියලා ඇල්ජීරියාවේ.
අපිටත් උනේ
ඒකම.
දැන් මේ ලෝක බෙදලා ඉවර දෙකට. ඒ දෙකට කියන්නේ යුක්‍රේනය හා රුසියාවත් එක්ක තමයි බෙදලා තියෙන්නේ. යුක්‍රේනය ආක්‍රමණිකයා.
අබවයි නැවතත් කියනවා මේක යුක්‍රේනය හා රුසියාවද ප්‍රශ්න
නෙමෙයි. ඒක තමයි ප්‍රශ්නේ පේන්නේ. ප්‍රශ්නේ ස්වරූපය එකයි. ප්‍රශ්නේ මූලයෙන් තියෙන වෙන තැන.
සම්පත් තියෙනවා. අපිට ඉස්සරහට
යන්න බෑ. හරියට හරි. ජාත්‍යන්තර වෙළඳපොළ ටාගට් කරනවා නම් එතන තියෙන්නේ gain of trade. භාණ්ඩයක් හරි සයවාවක් හරි විකුණලා ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් වාසිය ඉහළ වෙන්න ඕන.
මම ඉතින් දේශපාලනඥයෙකුත් නෙවෙයි ආර්ථික විද්‍යාඥයෙකුත් නෙවෙයි.
හැබැයි දේශපාලනඥයෝ හොඳින් දන්නවා.
දේශපාලනඥයෝ
වැඩ කරේ කොහොමද කියලා.
හුඟක් හොඳට දන්නවා. ජනාධිපතිවරු හත් දිනත් එක්කම වැඩ කරපු එකම මිනිස්සයා මම හිතන්නේ රාජ්‍යස්කරී හිටපු.
Welcome back to Face the Nation. If you're just joining us, you're just in time for the final round. We're discussing the energy crisis in Sri Lanka with former CEB Chairman Professor Anura Vijayapala, Mr. Cyril Suduwalla, former laboratory and technical head and a former acting chairperson at the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, and also Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, a past president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. Suduwalla, I'd like to start this final round with you. We spoke about all of the different problems. We discussed in terms of fuel, electricity, gas. There were some inventive and innovative solutions that we talked about. But realistically, what is it that we need to be doing right now? In your area of expertise, at least, what is it that we need to be doing right now to get out of this crisis? And do you see any of those steps being taken?
I think what to be done is so far not done, and so what to be done is now the conventional distribution fuel system will not serve any purpose any longer. So with the limited stocks available and the shortage of money, what we have to, we'll have introduce some new systems like rationing of some products and distribution system change. Distribution system, not the environment or the political system. I've seen a distribution system should be changed. As I said, we have about more than 1,700 fuel stations island wide, and we can segregate the filling station for various products, and even the distribution system. And out of the total the daily requirement, the Western province requires 37% of fuel requirement. So if we manage Western province properly, I think probably you can easily manage outstations. And what we are today, according to the today requirement, the country is running at the low profile, and therefore we may not require the 4,000 liters of petrol and 6,000 liters of diesel. If you have the proper distribution system, probably we can go to a very low level of fuel requirement. And another option is to have at least one the bonded facility, storage facility, at least having at least 7 days storage of petrol and diesel, and then if you have all filling stations, you can top up at one day. You can, or even you can stop the distribution of fuel and top up all filling stations. Not many filling stations island wide. If you top up about 100 filling stations, you can come back to the normal situation, provided you have the sufficient stock in your stores. So that is the only solution for the time being. But in the long term, the solution, I think we should manage importing crude oil than importing products, and refine that in Sapukasun refinery.
And keep the refinery running continuously.
Then you get the old products, at least to a certain extent, you get the old products locally available.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cyril Suduwalla, as I said, former laboratory and technical head and also a former acting chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Next, I'd like to move to Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, the renewable energy representative on our panel this evening, a past president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. Jayasinghe, immediate steps that we need to take right now to come out of this crisis. I know you referred to some of the steps that the minister is hoping to introduce in the coming days. We are also hopeful that these will be introduced. But from your perspective, what needs to happen in the coming weeks, in the coming months, in the coming years?
Yeah, okay. So permit me to repeat what I said. I am hopeful that what the minister proposed, because first time somebody has proposed anything to manage it. So if you do that one, let's hope that we will see not necessarily end, but at a reduction in the queues, petrol queues, and also issue of adequate diesel to get the industry back on track, industry and public transport and things like that. That's I'm hoping for. I have a good feeling about it, saying that it is going to work. That's the short-term thing. But of course, that you can't leave it there. You must have been making plans on the longer term what we should be doing, because we can't continue to be depending on imported oil for our transport section. We must be getting on to that changeover. In fairness, biofuels is dead and gone. Don't waste time on that one. Electrification is the way forward. That's the way the whole world is going. You know, by 2035, not a single major manufacturer of automobiles will be making any diesel or petrol cars. Most people by 2030 would have gone about. Now what are we going to do? Now we should have a policy now to say, like I mentioned, what is already recorded. We must accelerate that one so that we get away from that one. The best thing is, you see, because like I have done, I always point to myself, and my friend Andre is doing the same thing, I'm sure. I make my own energy, both for my electricity as well as for my vehicle. Why shouldn't that be expanded so much, so that this demand for imported fossil fuel will come down very much? Now, again, going back further to also answer a question you raised earlier, why hasn't the bioenergy sector expanded? Not because of the problems of logistics and all those things that Andra talked about, that because we are blocked. Yeah, you see, even I think about 88 megawatts of projects which have gone very far, which were blocked, not allowed to go on. If that was not done, we would have added at least another 500 megawatts of electricity from renewables by this time. I'm also happen to be the vice president of the Solar Industries Association. You see, in spite of all these problems, now rooftops, we have reached something like 620 megawatts. You see. Now, we have potential to expand that any amount we want. Of course, there has to be facilitation. I'm very glad to see that the CEB seems to have changed their stance on that one. So we wanted them to be much more transparent and much more sort of proactive on that one. That is a very quick way of getting out of this problem. In the short term itself, because rooftop is something that you can very quickly. Unfortunately, there's a problem of foreign exchange for the components, which Minister promised to address and somehow to do something. It's just like this. Stop one load of fuel which is going to make electricity and use that money to buy some solar panels. You see, because that is once and for all. You bring that shipload of fuel for powering a power station, you'll have to continue to do that. Next time round, you need another ship, another ship, another ship. So we have to get out of that. The opportunities are there, technologies are there, possibilities are there. The world is doing it and proving it, but why aren't we doing it? That is what we have to be looking at in the longer term. Now, particularly I want to come back to the gas problem, which is the one that should have been addressed completely. I have absolutely no hope of they are being able to get enough gas, even if they do, what the price is going to be. Now they are giving it at 6,800, but Luf Gas has bumped it up some more, right? So that is no solution at all for which I am very glad to say the stoves are there, but of course there is a gap of how to supply the wood charcoal, not coconut shell charcoal. Some people will continue to use whatever little coconut shell charcoal they have. All the questions you ask, of course, it is not 100% convenient as gas, but it's price you have to pay, right? And when you don't have that, however convenient it is, but it's no use for you. So you have to go with what you have. People will have to accept that change. If they do that one, it is going to be now. A lot of my friends as well as my children's friends, they are gone. They are very happy. They are managing. They are also very busy people who get up in the morning, go for work, and they have got themselves sort of sorted out. You know, they are managing in that. They are quite happy about that one. You see, they won't. They just can't afford to go and wait in gas queue for days and days. So that possibility is there. But I am looking forward to is that knowledge to go around, and we need people to come into that manufacture of wood charcoal. I would like to see the corporates to come into this one because it's a very big business. You are talking about 80 billion rupee business per year. You see, that's big enough for any industry. So I like to see the corporates get into this business of manufacture and distribution of wood charcoal. That's a big business, and that's one problem for which there is a solution. Not dependent on dollars, not dependent on the government, not dependent on anybody else's goodwill or anything like that. It's for us to do it. It can be done at any scale you want. Smallest span, we're doing that. All that money is going to flow out into the rural people who deserve the best. So that's, I think, why I have hope for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, past president of the Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka, and finally, Professor Anura Vijayapala, former chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board. Professor Vijayapala, what are the solutions?
Yeah, I think Majid, now if you come to all the problems with the food, fuel, electricity, or name anything, medicine, the root cause is lack of dollars. So our first target should be increasing our dollar earnings from outside. That should be the number one target. That will solve, at least ease all these sectors. Then before starting on the energy sector and saying how to improve on that, I would like to go a little outside that educational sector, where I am a professor and a teacher in the university. And I see in front of my own eyes, we spend a lot of money to make a engineering graduate, and in other fields, medical and other whatever the other fields, right? And we spend a lot of money from bring him from grade 1 to university and then to educate him. I think at least $10,000–15,000 are spent. And now we have 3 million people, migrant workers, who have gone abroad and working, and 2 million are working and sending money back. 1 million people, 1 million of our citizens are migrated and settled either in Canada or in Australia or in some other country, and we educated them at our cost, and they are developing Australia, Canada and other countries. So we have gifted them. So the Australia has a nice marking scheme to select the best brains from us for their development, and we are gifting. Can we afford to do that anymore? We can't. So what I suggest is, if anybody is migrating immediately after graduation or without working 10–15 years here, we must, every degree certificate on the back side, there should be the cost of his education printed. When you graduate as an electrical engineer from University of Moratuwa, we have spent $15,000 or $20,000 for your education, or rupees, whatever the number we have spent on that. So please make sure that you repay that to the country by working hard, doing your duty. So every A-level certificate, O-level certificate, up to that level, how much it cost for the public to bring him to that state free of charge should be printed, and so that everybody knows. So if anybody choose to go abroad, migrate, and not, if somebody goes and work and earn dollars and send here, so much the better, we have no problem. But if somebody migrate, we should ask, what is printed on your certificate, you must pay us at least part by part, whatever, in a convenient way to you, for that is public money. And I calculated, if there are 1 million migrated people, at least say half of them pay, 500,000 pay. if they pay $10,000 each, right, over 12 months period or whatever, we get $5 billion, which we have spent, and we have invested that to develop Australia, to develop Canada. We can't do it. We are the poorest country in South Asia, and we are doing the utter foolish things. Australian graduates graduate on a loan. There is no free universities. They are given a loan. So whether they work in Australia or elsewhere, they have to pay back the loan. So there no harm happened to their economy. So these are foolish things we have to correct. That is on the educational sector. So I hope that this will be taken by the people and make use of. And when it comes to the electricity sector and the energy sector, we have an immediate crisis, which we have to attend to these 12 months. We don't have dollars, whether we want rooftop solar or anything. We don't have dollars to buy them. Mr. Jayasinghe said an alternative way, but that has all complications, because if you get even the number of ships we are getting reduced, our problems will be multiplied and queues will be even getting longer, and electricity cuts will be even getting longer, and so on. But let us look in a different way. What I suggest is, as he said, we have 630 megawatts of rooftop solar, and we should check whether they are operated optimally. I know some inverters are burned, some have never been cleaned. So whatever the plant and machinery we have within this country now, we must get the maximum benefit. We must drive those companies. The ministry should get all these companies and ask how many you have installed, how many are running, and are they serviced, are they maintained, are the solar panels washed at least once every 6 months. Nothing has been done, I think, as per my experience. So there are some systems, they are not working at all because of the inverter issues and so on. So whatever the machinery we have here now, we must get the best use, even for CB's hydropower plants, and they must be managed well to get maximum benefit, whether they are optimally operated. Now recently we saw that some water was released and there was a controversy over that. They should not happen if that was true. But every kilowatt hour we can save, we should do that, and immediately we should give the tariff increase to CEB. Now the electricity is the cheapest now, so the people waste. So however much we preach, we cut power, everything, but you know that people, don't you see lights are burning here and there because no one cares, even in their premises, because the low block owners pay ₹2.50 per the first 30 units, right? Can you buy a toffee for ₹2.50? You can't, right? You can't. So you can see now, therefore, but I don't say that the low blocks should be increased to cost reflective tariffs, because then that will be a too hard a hit, but they should be increased so that you know that they will be driven to conserve. Now I see that there are many houses still having this incandescent lamps, all incandescent lamps. You know, we import fuel, produce electricity, that we put into a incandescent lamp, 97% is going as heat. 3% is coming out as light. So how foolish. I think government should say, if you are using the government subsidized electricity in your home, you can't have a single bulb of incandescent lamps. If you have, your subsidy will be removed. Something like that, because we can't afford to do these things. Or in other way, give him a LED or whatever light at government, so CEB's expense. It's even cheaper. To give him a free LED is cheaper than wasting that energy.
The electricity for the incandescent.
Yes. These are, you know, the utter foolish things that we are doing in this country, and why we are here today in this situation is it is fully justifiable.
We deserve it.
We make graduates donate to develop Canada. Can we do it? You can't do it. We get this expensive electricity from oil and put into incandescent lamps. There are 100 megawatts, over 100 megawatts of lamps in Sri Lanka, and they waste. You can't do that. There should be policy decisions on these things, and they should be strictly implemented. And therefore, now immediately what we can do is conservation. Conservation can be done in several different ways. One is education. One is price signals. I like these price increases. Unfortunately, I have to say, if you give fuel cheaper, people used to waste. They run everywhere with cheap fuel, with wasting with big engines, and so the country can't afford to. Therefore, price signals are good, but at the same time, vulnerable groups have to be looked after. The poorer sector by different mechanisms, right? But the rich should be able to pay the cost, right? So what I suggest is immediately get the maximum benefit of solar and renewable or hydro power plants, whatever the things available here. As Mr. Jayasinghe said, get the best maximum out of biomass. That's good. I think all the people living in flats and others, they will have a restriction, but even others can do. Individual home living people, dwellings, they can do at least. And so the short supply of this gas can be given to those who really need it, and the industries also. So I think what I suggest is this to the government, like study the 1996 solution, study this Energy Supply Act, and at least now appoint similar system, Energy Supply Committee, emergency system, who has the authority to work on all these things and to take decisions and implement. And they should be working 24 hours every day, looking at all these gas, electricity, fuel, all sectors together, and take decisions cohesively, not sectoral decisions, and thereby meet, at least ease the people's suffering. That we should do. And economy to recover, it will take some time, and it should be multi-pronged approach. This conservation, borrowings, restructuring of the loans, and making our system more efficient, and giving priority to dollar earning industries. And if we do all these things together, I think within say 12 to 18, 24 months, we can be at least in a comfortable zone where we will not have these queues and other things.
Thank you very much, Professor Vijaypala, former Chairman CEB. Thank you very much, Mr. Parakrama Jayasinghe, past President, Bioenergy Association of Sri Lanka. And also thank you very much to Mr. Cyril Suduwalla, former lab and technical head and also former acting chairperson of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Thank you also to my trusty colleague, Shahan Ranatunga, and let's thank our untrustworthy colleague, Mr. Deshan Gondwana. He tried. He made the best of efforts regardless of the challenges and the obstacles in his path.
This is live TV.
Yeah.
Yes.
We miss Deshan Gondwana on
today's
show. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening in. I mean, one of the key takeaways from tonight's program has to be the fact that when we think of energy, and we tend to do this in our field as well, we always tend to separate things like fuel and gas and electricity. But there is a need to look at the entire energy picture, the entire power and energy picture in a holistic fashion. And that's where you'll find holistic solutions. And that's where you'll maybe not overlook certain variables, certain very important variables. We have a habit of ending Face the Nation programs with a quote, so I'm going to use a quote completely out of context. I'm using it simply because it has the word energy in it. But this is from Albert M. Greenfield. A man does not need brilliance or genius. All he needs is energy. Good night and good luck.